In Washington, D.C., history in the making is an everyday process. This is a city of monumental buildings and national shrines.
Abraham Lincoln may have been born in a humble log cabin in Kentucky, but his memory is forever enshrined in a majestic marble temple in Washington, D.C. In the 100 years since construction began on the site in February 1914, the Lincoln Memorial has transformed from a tribute to a single person into a beacon for unity, justice, and freedom. Architect Henry Bacon was challenged with designing a monument that could honor the legacy of the great emancipator while also serving as a symbol of unity for a nation still healing from a bloody civil war. It would include 36 Doric columns representing each existing state at Lincoln's death. Bacon made sure that the memorial was built with materials from both sides of the Mason-Dixon line. Granite steps from Massachusetts, ceiling tiles from Alabama, limestone walls from Indiana, and 28 pieces of Georgia marble for the centerpiece, the statue of Lincoln. The memorial quickly became a platform for protest and free speech. In 1939, 25 years before the Civil Rights Act, a single concert would break down barriers. When discriminatory policies barred African-American opera singer Marian Anderson from singing to an integrated audience at Constitution Hall, First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt stepped in. Roosevelt brought Anderson's show to the Lincoln Memorial and an audience of 75,000 listeners. Anderson would sing there again years later at the March on Washington.
NBC News presents The March on Washington, a recap of the mass march on the nation's capital by Negroes of America. Now, here's NBC News correspondent Frank McGee.
A multitude of Negroes and whites moved on.
250,000 people gathered at the Washington Mall in 1963, the centennial year of Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, to demand civil rights and economic justice for African Americans.
He's got the whole world.
The highlight of that day was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech, "I Have a Dream," which he began with a tribute to Lincoln.
50 years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today.
King's speech would be commemorated in a plaque on the steps of the memorial, and eventually with a D.C. memorial of his own. With the March on Washington, the Lincoln Memorial was reborn as a megaphone for the voice of the American people. From anti-war protests to million-man marches, each year saw citizens follow King's footsteps into Lincoln's shadow to make their voices heard. 50 years after the march, America's first African-American president, a devotee of both King and Lincoln, would reflect on that legacy.
Everyone who realizes what those glorious patriots knew on that day, that change does not come from Washington, but to Washington. The change has always been built on our willingness, we, the people, to take on the mantle of citizenship. You are marching. And that's the lesson of our past. That's the promise of tomorrow. And in the face of impossible odds, people who love their country can change it.